Welcome to class PM. The previous class we have studied how actually the Ernest Haeckel and Robert Whittaker had classified the organisms into various groups like based on kingdom, phyla, division or class, order, genus and species, right? Though this binomial nomenclature was been accepted universally, there were few drawbacks like where euglena was not actually considered to be either a plant or an animal, and virus is also not to be considered as plant or animal. So based on these conclusions, our Robert Whittaker, who was an ecologist, came out with a five kingdom classification, which was actually based on factors like complexity of cell structure, okay, the body organization, how the cells are being arranged, okay, to give the proper shape, mode and source of nutrition. Mode in the sense what type of nutrition do they have, like autotrophic nutrition or heterotrophic nutrition, and then the relationship with the other organisms, like are they correlated, interrelationship between, you can say phylogenetic relationship. So according to Whittaker, he had categorized organisms into two, like prokaryotes and eukaryotes. We have been learning about prokaryotes and eukaryotes right from the beginning, right? So under the prokaryotes you have a kingdom called Monera, and these eukaryotes, we know that these eukaryotes have membrane bound organelles, right? So depending upon the function of the cell, they are classified into unicellular and multicellular. As we all know, unicellular organisms possess one single cell throughout their lifetime. So these under unicellular organisms you have a kingdom called Protista, and under multicellular also we have been learning, right, there are few cells which possess cell wall, that is example plants, which is made up of a tough substance called cellulose. But there are few organisms whose cells do not have any cell wall, right? So the organisms which possess cell wall are categorized into two types again, like based on whether they are green or non-green, right? So in case of non-green and which do not perform photosynthesis, the kingdom fungi falls under it. And when you talk about the green ones which can undergo the process of photosynthesis, you can have a kingdom called Plantae. And without a cell wall, the kingdom is nothing but Animalia. So these are the five different classifications which were being given by Whittaker, So now let us learn. See, you can see 1 Monera, 2 Protista, 3 fungi, 4 Plantae and 5 is Animalia. So let us learn about these classification in detail, and let us first begin with the first kingdom, Monera. So when you talk about kingdom Monera, in Greek, monos means single. So that's the reason they are named as monerans. They are called as Monera. So what do you think? Why do we call it as single? Because this kingdom includes group of organisms which are ancient, smallest, simplest and plentiful prokaryotes. You can say includes simple, smallest and plentiful prokaryotes. You know that these prokaryotes are said to be the primitive organisms. They are said to be the primitive organisms, and you know these monerans are considered to be the first inhabitants on the Earth's crust. That means they were said to be the first organisms to flourish after the discovery or after the evolution of Earth. First inhabitants of the Earth. Now, as I've told you, the general things about this kingdom Monera, according to the Greek language, monos means single, right? Monos means single, and the group of organisms, this Monera kingdom will include group of organisms which are simple, smallest and mostly prokaryotes, and these were considered to be the first inhabitants of the Earth, and you know, to your surprise, they still flourish. That means they are still there, and we can still observe these under microscope. So let us see what are the characteristic features of this kingdom Monera. As I've told you, the first characteristic is they are mostly unicellular, filamentous. What do you mean by filamentous? That means they have thread-like structures over the body, and do not have definite nucleus, definite nucleus. So we all know in case of prokaryotes, the nucleus is not surrounded by a nuclear membrane, right? Instead they float inside the cytoplasm, which is said to be a nucleoid. So they do not have a definite nucleus, and the genetic material which is present, it is circular. It is circular, and you can see a double stranded DNA is present in case of these. Genetic material is circular double stranded DNA. So when you just look at the characteristic features, of these monerans, you see that mostly these are unicellular, because we know that most of the prokaryotes are unicellular, and they are filamentous. Filamentous in the sense they have thread-like structures which are present in the body, and they do not have a definite nucleus. They don't possess any definite nucleus, and as you know that as there is no definite nucleus, the genetic material which is circular double-stranded helical DNA will not be enclosed in any of the nuclear membrane or envelope. You see that they are present in the form of a nucleoid, right? And the cytoplasm is devoid of membrane-bound organelles. We know that there are membrane-bound organelles in organisms like eukaryotes. There are membrane-bound organelles in case of eukaryotes like mitochondria, like say Golgi complex or endoplasmic reticulum, right? But these membrane-bound organelles are absent in case of monerans, because these are usually unicellular, so they will not have any membrane-bound organelles. And the cell wall is generally present. And few prokaryotes may not have cell wall. And mode of nutrition is either autotrophic or heterotrophic. The mode of nutrition is usually autotrophic. You know what is autotrophic? That means they can synthesize their own food because of the pigment chlorophyll which is present, right? And in few cases they are heterotrophic, because they have to depend upon other organisms to derive the food. Okay, and then there are single-stranded flagella present in many monerans. Okay, there are many monerans which will have single-stranded flagellae. I'll show you. When you take example of bacteria, when you take a typical bacterial cell, it will have flagellae, these hair-like structures which are present. This is said to be flagella. I'll tell you what is the importance of flagella in these monerans. The thing is, the flagella will help in locomotion. Okay, they help in the locomotion of this organisms. Okay, so these are present in case of, I just gave you an outline of the bacterial cell. I did not write exact all the parts of this. So this bacterial cell will have hair-like strands which are said to be flagella, right? This flagella will help in locomotion, and examples of this kingdom are bacteria, cyanobacteria, that is nothing but your blue-green algae. As I've told you, few of them are autotrophic. When they are, in case of blue-green algae, you see that there is a green pigment which will help in process of photosynthesis. That's the reason you can say, whereas bacteria is heterotrophic, it cannot synthesize its food. So based on this only, I told you that the mode of nutrition could be either autotrophic or heterotrophic. So this is about the kingdom Monera. Now let us continue doing with the next kingdom, Protista. So when we look at the next kingdom, Protista, in Greek, protistos means first of all. That means these organisms are considered to be the first of all the organisms, which includes unicellular eukaryotes. We know that when you talk about these unicellular eukaryotes, we know that these unicellular organisms, they possess only one single cell. Now let us see what are the characteristic features of these kingdom Protista. Mostly they are aquatic and live wherever there is water available. Okay, you can see the slime molds growing wherever there is wet condition in your house, right? So these cells usually possess a protoplasm with a distinct plasma membrane. So the genetic material, we know that the genetic material which is present inside the cell is enclosed in a nuclear envelope. See, that is the difference between a prokaryote and a eukaryote. In case of prokaryotes, the nuclear material is not enclosed in the nuclear envelope, but whereas in case of eukaryotes, the nuclear envelope has all those nuclear material inside it, right? And the cytoplasm will contain all the membrane bound organelles, like say your mitochondria, say ribosomes, or say Golgi complex, say ER, or whatever, right? So, and the mode of nutrition can be either autotrophic or heterotrophic. Either they try to synthesize their own food, or they usually get the food from other organisms. And they possess usually pseudopodia, flagella or cilia for locomotion. That means these protistas Protista kingdom organisms are motile in nature. That means they can move from one place to the other place. And do they have any legs to move? No, definitely not. See, when I explained the kingdom Monera, I've shown you the flagella, right? In the same way, we know that amoeba which is present, it has projections which are said to be pseudopodia, right? This pseudopodia will help amoeba to move, and at the same time it will also help the amoeba to engulf the food or capture the food. And when you look at euglena, when you look at the structure of euglena, they have long hair-like structures like this which are said to be flagella, right? And this flagella will help the euglena to move from one place to the other place. And you know, generally they move from, they possess locomotion for what? To derive food, So these are the characteristic features of the kingdom Protista. Next, let us continue with the next kingdom, fungi. So let us talk about the next kingdom, fungi. As this kingdom fungi, it includes a group of organisms whose form is in the form of a thallus. You know what is thallus? That means a group of cells is said to be a thallus, which are not differentiated into either a stem, root or leaves. That means they don't have any stem, they don't have any root, they don't have any leaves. So they also possess a definite cell wall and they lack chlorophyll. Why do they lack chlorophyll? Because they don't have any leaves present in it. So when you look at the characteristic features of this fungi, you see that these are mostly unicellular or multicellular, and they are filamentous. If I tell you they are filamentous, I can give you a best example. See, if your mother has brought bread and she might have forgotten it to toast it, right? And if the bread is left for more than 15 days, okay, and what happens after the 15 days when you look at the bread? What do you observe? You see that buff, like greenish grey colored structure which develops on the bread. That is nothing but fungi. And when you take this fungi and try to observe it under microscope, you see that these appear to be thread-like structures, a network of thread-like structures. So that is the reason I told you that most of these fungi are characterized by the filamentous nature. And the cell wall is made up of a tough substance called cellulose or another substance which is said to be chitin. And when you look at the mode of nutrition, the mode of nutrition in case of these fungi is usually heterotrophic, because as I've told you, we have seen the characters that they don't have any leaves. So when there is no leaf, there is no green color, and when there is no green pigment, definitely they cannot synthesize food. So the mode of nutrition is usually heterotrophic or saprophytic. You know what is saprophytic? Saprophytic in the sense they feed upon dead and decaying organisms or decaying parts of plants and animals. So usually these fungi grow on the dead and decaying parts of animals or plants, and they derive the nutrients from them. So that is the reason they are called as saprophytic. And the reserve food material, see, every organism will store food for the future use, right? Even our body stores the food so that we get energy out of the food which we eat. So in the same case of fungi, you see that the reserve food material is in the form of glycogen or oil molecules And every fungi has two different phases in it. One is vegetative phase, the other is reproductive phase. So when you talk about vegetative, the name itself tells us that it is nowhere related to reproduction. So it is concerned mainly with assimilation of food. What do you mean assimilation of food? Gathering the food, right? And reproductive phase, we mainly concerned with the reproduction through spore formation. This is, examples are mushrooms, rhizopus, penicillium, and I have drawn a rhizopus over here, one single filament of rhizopus. You see that they have a spore, a sac-like structure which is said to be sporangia, which runs down as a thin, long structure, cylindrical structure which is said to be filament. And one single filament is said to be hyphae. What is it called? Hyphae. And you see that the sporangium which is present, it is filled with spores. And once this sporangium is full of spores, the cell wall will burst and release the spores, and when they fall onto the ground, that is the next substratum, they develop into a new sporangia. That is, they develop into a new rhizopus. So this is how they reproduce through spores. So this is about your kingdom fungi.